want to share the revelation knowledge the Holy Spirit gave me this morning on the 8th day. Now, part of me wishes to set a big foundation, starting with Eden being the sanctuary of God. But if the Holy Spirit leads me, I'll do that in a separate video. So this video will be for those who already have the foundation, the revelation knowledge on everything else I'll say, and this is just to add on to that. So perhaps it's not for everyone, but for those who have ears to hear, I pray the Holy Spirit quickens this word within you. So now we know that on the 7th day, God rested. We know the 7th day is a day of rest. And we know by Hebrews 4:3 that for we which have believed to enter into his rest, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world. And the Bible does say, blessed are those who die in the Lord, for they will rest from all their labors. So we know that we get to enter into God's rest. We also know that to be the 7th day to be the day that the Lord rules and reigns on the earth. And we also know that the feasts that were given in the Old Testament, in the book of Leviticus, are a pattern and a prophecy. It's something that the Lord himself fulfills. I've made a video many months ago on the spring feasts and the fall feasts. Christ has fulfilled the spring feast to the day, and the time comes for him to fulfill the fall feasts, starting with the ones that is left. He will come the Feast of the Trumpets is he's coming to rule and reign. Then we have the Day of Atonement, which is the day in which Israel will be forgiven. And then we have the Feast of Tabernacles. And what's beautiful about the Feast of Tabernacles, in Leviticus 23:36, it says, 7 days you shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. But on the 8th day shall be a holy convocation unto you. So the 7th is the finished work of God. On the 7th day, Christ will come and fulfill it in his 1,000-year reign, that being the 7th feast. The Feast of Tabernacles representing Emmanuel, God with us, Jesus tabernacling with us for 1,000 years. But there's our clue. There is an 8th day, and the 8th day shall be a holy convocation unto you. It doesn't say why. In fact, the feasts themselves say very little about the why. It's for us to see and find out. So that's the first mention of the 8th day. We know that after the Feast of Tabernacles, for 7 days, the 8th day is important. And the other key of the 8th day is we'll see in Leviticus 12:3 that on the 8th day is when little baby boys were brought before God. They were brought at the temple to be circumcised. So hold that thought. I'm going to switch to the other side of this, and I'll come back in the end. And the book of Daniel 13, when Daniel prays, he wanted to know the meaning of his vision, and a messenger from God does come to tell him the interpretation of his vision or his dream. And in Daniel 10:13, he says, he was withheld for 3 weeks. He says, the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me, but Michael came and helped me. And in Daniel 10:20, we see, now I return and fight the prince of Persia, and when I'm gone forth, the prince of Greece, I guess, shall come. So we see that the prince of the kingdom of Persia, of the kingdom of Greece, are princes, and it's not talking about the earthly physical people. It's talking about those rulers in the heavenly places. They're referred to as princes. In the book of Ezekiel 28:10, it talks about the prince of Tyrus. I believe that to be potentially Lucifer, and I also believe that Lucifer and Satan are two different people, because one is the prince of Tyrus, and the other one, we'll see just a few chapters later, is referred to as Pharaoh, the prince of Egypt. And Egypt itself, if you look at the name, Egypt was named after someone. I'll leave it at that. So in Ezekiel 28:10, it talks about the prince of Tyrus, and it says, you shall die the death of the uncircumcised by the hands of strangers. Now, Tyrus, the earthly physical one, was not a part of Israel. They were uncircumcised to begin with. So weeks ago when I read this, the word stood out. I knew it meant something, but it was only when the Holy Spirit brought the key together that I saw. So hold that thought. The prince of Tyrus in Ezekiel 28:10 will die the deaths of the uncircumcised by the hand of strangers. And if you look further in Ezekiel 28, it talks about the prince of Tyrus, or the king of Tyrus, as he also calls him, says that you are in the mountain of God. It says you have been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering. By the multitude of your merchandise, they have filled the midst of you with violence, and you have sinned. Therefore, I will cast you out as profane out of the mountain of God. It's talking about Eden, the garden of God, also being the mountain of God. So we know it's a heavenly place. And this is where I was tempted to start the foundation of Eden being a heavenly place, but I'll leave that for another time. So we know that the prince of Tyrus was walking up and down in the garden of God, and says that you will die the deaths of the uncircumcised. Fast forward to Ezekiel 31:18, it talks about this great tree in Eden, a cedar, that has lifted the waters, made him great, and he was lifted up above all of the other trees, and all the trees of Eden were jealous of him. And that big tree was cut down, and all of the trees of Eden that were jealous of him were cast out of there with the tree of Eden. Now, we know trees are not jealous of each other. We know these are people. These are those who were in the Garden of Eden, this heavenly place before Adam. And in Ezekiel 31, last verse, verse 18, it says, hey, this is Pharaoh and his multitude. Pharaoh being Egypt, Pharaoh being a prince who was in the garden of God a long time ago. But that what I want you to see in verse 18, it says, I have it here, to whom are you like in glory and greatness among the trees of Eden? Yet you shall be brought down with the trees of Eden unto the nether parts of the earth. You shall lie in the midst of the uncircumcised, with them that be slain from the sword. Keyword uncircumcised. If it was talking about a physical Pharaoh, the earthly one, he was a Gentile. He was not circumcised. We know this prince, it's talking about someone who was in Eden, circumcised by whatever definition that may be meant. So here is what I want you to see. When it tells the prince of Tyrus, you shall die the deaths of the uncircumcised, it tells the prince of Egypt that you shall lie in the midst of the uncircumcised. And then we see a reference in Psalm 82 when it says, verse 6 and 7, I have said you are gods, and all of you are the children of the Most High. Psalm 82 is talking about the sons of God, who are the princes over nations, there to rule and reign. And before they've fallen, it reads Psalm 82 of what their expectations were, and that will be us on the 8th day. But it says, I have said you are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. But you shall die like man, and fall like one of the princes. Die like man. Ezekiel 28:10. You shall die the death of the uncircumcised. So to put it all together, hopefully by now you see it. On the 8th day is a new beginning, a new day. That will be after the Feast of the Tabernacles, because there's yet an 8th day. And on the 8th day is the day in which Jewish boys of the people of God were brought before God, and they were circumcised. They were now part of the people of God. We also see that those who were before us in Eden, it said they must have been, to some extent, I don't know what that means in those heavenly terms, but they had to have been quote-unquote circumcised to be threatened to die the death of the uncircumcised. And by Psalm 82, we know that the uncircumcised were the man, where those who are not of a heavenly place. That was the difference. And what we see in Revelation 3:5, I've made a video before, I'll link it in the description, but I talk about the Holy Spirit showing me that the promises to the overcomers are sequential. They tell a story. And at the end of the 1,000-year reign says, to him who will overcome and shall keep my works unto the end, to him I will give the morning star. And that's the end of the seventh day. And then we see the eighth day in Revelation 3:5. It says, I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. Church, that's the eighth day. That's us, as uncircumcised as people of this earth, being presented before the Father and his angels, beginning the eighth day. That is our eighth day. It's our new beginning, and it's after the day of rest, the day of seventh, and it's in the heaven of God. After that, the eighth day has the church, the New Jerusalem, being pillars in the New Jerusalem, and ruling and reigning with Christ forever. So the eighth day is beyond the seventh. The eighth day is our being brought before God into the heavenly place. Now we are then the people, like the prince of Tyrus and the prince of Egypt or Pharaoh. We will be on the eighth day. We are the circumcised in the garden of God in the New Jerusalem. We will be in that place from where Lucifer, from where Satan have fallen. It is our turn. We are those who will be considered circumcised. We will be little g gods, all of you children of the Most High God, and for your rules and responsibilities of what it means to rule and reign with Christ. Psalm 82 is a great indication of that. But I hope and I pray the Holy Spirit quickens this word within you. And I hope you see the beauty of what is the eighth day. Be blessed.